If marriage is a house, mine's the kind you see burning on the 6 o'clock news while the reporter explains how nobody saw it coming. My name is Tom Ritchie. I'm 39 years old, and I'm a structural engineer who should have paid more attention to the cracks in my own foundation. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday. Elise, my wife of 12 years, was standing in our Baltimore row house kitchen, staring at her phone like it contained the secrets of the universe. She had that look, the one women get when they're planning something they know you won't like. "Working late again tonight," she said without looking up. "Big event coming up at the office." Elise worked as an events executive for Palmer and Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. Her boss was Matt Palmer, a guy everyone called Pumper because of his habit of pumping iron and pumping up his own ego in equal measure. I'd met him at company parties. Slick hair, expensive suits, the kind of handshake that lasted too long. "Third time this week?" I said, pouring coffee into my thermos. "Must be some event." She finally looked up, and for just a second I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt. Annoyance. Hard to tell with Elise. She'd always been good at hiding things when she wanted to. "It's important, Tom. This could really advance my career." I nodded and grabbed my keys. What else was I supposed to do? Accuse her of lying? Demand to see her phone? That's not who I am. Or wasn't anyway. The drive to my office took me through the heart of Baltimore, past the harbor and into the industrial district where my engineering firm occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse. I spent the day reviewing blueprints for a new apartment complex, but my mind kept wandering back to Elise and that look on her face. My best friend Drew stopped by around lunch. Drew Kowalski was everything I wasn't: loud, confident, and completely unable to keep his mouth shut about anything. He worked construction and had opinions about everything from the Ravens draft picks to the proper way to make a sandwich. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," he said, dropping into the chair across from my desk. "Just tired. Elise has been working a lot lately." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Drew raised an eyebrow. "Working, huh? What kind of work keeps someone out until midnight on a Tuesday?" "Event planning. Big project." "Right." Drew didn't sound convinced. "You know, Kelly mentioned something interesting the other day." Kelly was Drew's girlfriend, a nurse who somehow knew everyone in Baltimore and all their business. She was like a human gossip network. "What kind of something?" "She saw Elise at that fancy steakhouse downtown last Thursday, the one with the valet parking. Said she was with some guy in a suit." My stomach did a little flip. Probably a client meeting. "At 9 p.m. on a Thursday?" Drew leaned forward. "Tom, I'm not trying to start trouble, but..." "Then don't." Drew held up his hands. Okay. Just saying, if it were me, I'd want to know." After he left, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept thinking about Elise's late nights, her secretive phone calls, the way she'd started dressing up for work more than usual. Little things I'd noticed, but dismissed. That evening, Elise came home at 11:30, claiming she'd grabbed dinner with Kara, her best friend from college. Kara was one of those women who treated other people's marriages like her personal entertainment. She'd been divorced twice and seemed to think everyone else should join the club. "How's the big project going?" I asked as Elise kicked off her heels. "Good. Really good. Pumper thinks we might land the Morrison account if this goes well." She disappeared into the bathroom, and I heard the shower start. Her phone was sitting on the dresser, face down. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I picked it up. The screen lit up with a text notification. From P. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear that blue dress." My hands started shaking. I set the phone down exactly where I'd found it and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. 12 years of marriage, and it comes down to a text message about a blue dress. The shower was still running. I could hear Elise actually humming, like she didn't have a care in the world. I thought about confronting her right then, but something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the engineer in me wanting to gather more evidence before drawing conclusions. Either way, I decided to wait. The next few days were torture. I found myself analyzing every word Elise said, every expression on her face. She seemed happier than she'd been in months, which somehow made it worse. She was humming in the mornings, smiling at her phone, even being nicer to me than usual. On Friday, she announced another late night. "Kara and I are going to that new wine bar in Federal Hill," she said. "Girls' night." "Sounds fun. Tell Kara I said hello." But instead of going home after work, I drove to Federal Hill. I parked across from the wine bar and waited. And waited. At 9 p.m., I called Kara's number. I still had it from when she'd helped plan Elise's surprise birthday party 2 years ago. "Hello?" Kara sounded confused. "Hey, Kara, it's Tom. Is Elise with you?" A pause. "Tom? No, I'm at home. Why?" "She said you two were having a girls' night at that wine bar." Another pause, longer this time. Oh, Tom, I hung up. I sat in my car for another hour, but Elise never showed up at the wine bar. When I got home, she was already there, talking about how much fun she'd had with Kara and how they'd closed the place down. That's when I knew for sure. Saturday morning, Elise slept late, and I took the time to think. The smart move, the one that kept everything neat and clean, would have been to hire a private investigator, gather evidence, file for divorce through lawyers. It would have been civilized, the kind of process that avoided confrontation. But I wasn't feeling particularly civilized. Instead, I did something that would have made my engineering professors proud. I started gathering data. Elise's schedule, her excuses, the patterns in her behavior. I made a spreadsheet. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but organization is how I process things. If I could map it out, I could understand it. And if I understood it, I could figure out how to make it stop. While Elise was in the shower, I went through the house and started making a mental inventory. What was mine, what was hers, what we'd bought together. It wasn't about the stuff, it was about control. If things were going to change, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I also started moving important documents to my office, insurance papers, bank statements, the deed to the house. It felt like preparation, like getting my armor on before the real battle began. Drew came by around noon with beer and sandwiches. Elise was out getting her nails done, or so she said. I didn't believe that for a second. "You look terrible," Drew said, handing me a sandwich. "Like you haven't slept in a week." "I haven't." I told him about the text message and the wine bar lie. Drew listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. Normally he'd jump in with some off-color joke or advice, but today he was quiet. "So what are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. "I'm working on it." "Tom, I know you like to plan everything out, but sometimes you just have to act. This pumper guy is making a fool out of you." "Not for much longer." I could tell Drew didn't fully understand. He wasn't the kind of guy who thought through things in a methodical way. He'd always been the type to jump in, not worrying about the consequences. But this wasn't something you acted on in the heat of the moment. No, this required precision, careful timing. If I was going to play this game, I was going to do it my way. That afternoon, while Elise was supposedly at yoga, I drove to Palmer & Associates. The office was in a renovated brick building in the Inner Harbor district, glass and chrome, trying too hard to look important, the kind of place that made it clear the company was all about image. I wasn't there for the image. I was there for the truth. I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked in a spot where I could see the parking garage entrance and waited. I wasn't going to just take Elise's word for it anymore. If she was lying, I wanted proof. At 4:15, Pumper's silver BMW pulled out, followed 30 seconds later by Elise's Honda. My stomach tightened. I started my car and trailed them. They drove to a hotel in Harbor East. Not some sleazy motel on the outskirts of town, a nice hotel. Marble columns, valet parking, the kind of place that made it clear this wasn't just about physical attraction. This was about lifestyle. This was about the kind of life Elise thought she deserved, the kind of life she had chosen. I parked across the street and watched them disappear into the lobby. Pumper's hand on her back, guiding her through the door like they were a couple. I knew then that whatever was happening between them, it wasn't just an affair. It was something more, something deeper. Elise wasn't just looking for comfort. She was looking for a life, a new identity, one where I didn't fit in anymore. I stayed for a while, watching, trying to convince myself that this was just a mistake, that maybe I was jumping to conclusions, but deep down, I knew I wasn't. Elise was making her choices, and I was finally seeing her for who she really was, someone who was willing to tear everything down to build something new, something that didn't include me. I started the car and drove away. The anger was starting to build now, but I kept it in check. This wasn't about anger. It was about what came next. The game was on, and I wasn't going to lose. I sat in my car and called my lawyer. Francine Morrison was a friend from college who'd gone into family law. She was smart, ruthless, and had no patience for cheating spouses. "Tom, what's wrong? You sound awful." I explained the situation. Francine listened, occasionally asking questions about assets and timeline. "Okay," she said when I finished. "First thing, do not confront her yet. Do not move out. Do not give her any reason to claim you abandoned the marriage. Second, I need you to document everything. Times, places, witnesses. Already started. Good. Third, we need to secure your assets. Joint accounts, retirement funds, anything she could drain out of spite. How long do I have to keep pretending everything's normal? As long as it takes to protect yourself. I know it's hard, but it's not hard, Francine. It's impossible. When I got home, Elise was making dinner and acting like the perfect wife. She'd even changed into the blue dress from the text message. How was yoga? I asked. Great, really worked out some tension. She smiled at me, and I wanted to throw up. How was your day? Productive. Got a lot accomplished. After dinner, we watched a movie. Elise curled up next to me on the couch like we were newlyweds. Every few minutes, her phone would buzz with a text, and she'd check it discreetly. Work? I asked after the fifth buzz. Kara, she's having drama with her ex again. I excused myself and went upstairs. In my home office, I opened my laptop and started researching Matt Palmer. Social media profiles, business records, anything I could find. The guy had an ex-wife named Cheryl who'd taken him for half his assets in their divorce. He drove expensive cars, lived in a condo in Federal Hill, and posted gym selfies like he was 25 instead of 42. More importantly, he was married. His current wife was named Rachel, and from her Facebook posts, she seemed to think they had a happy marriage. Lots of photos of them at charity events and company parties, always smiling for the camera. I was starting to form a plan. Sunday morning, Elise announced she was going shopping with Kara. I said I had work to catch up on and would spend the day at the office. Instead, I drove to Federal Hill and found Pumper's building. It was one of those converted warehouse condos with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Very trendy, very expensive. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:30, Elise's Honda pulled into the visitor parking area. I took pictures. Lots of pictures. Elise getting out of her car, walking to the building entrance, using what was obviously a key to let herself in. This wasn't a new relationship. She'd been there enough times to have her own key. I waited 2 hours, taking more pictures when she finally came out. She looked happy, relaxed, like she'd just had the best morning of her life. That evening, she came home with shopping bags from stores she hadn't actually visited. Find anything good? I asked. A few things, nothing special. She showed me a dress she claimed to have bought, but I'd seen the same dress in her closet for months. That night, after Elise fell asleep, I went back to my office and printed out the photos. Clear, time-stamped evidence of her affair. I put them in a folder and locked it in my desk drawer. Then I opened my laptop and started writing an email. Dear Mrs. Palmer, you don't know me, but I think we need to talk. Monday morning, I sent the email to Rachel Palmer. I didn't include the photos, not yet, just a simple message suggesting we meet for coffee to discuss something important about our spouses. I signed it with just my first name and a phone number. She called 2 hours later. Is this Tom? Her voice was shaky, like she'd been expecting this call for a long time. Yes, thank you for calling. What you said in your email about Matt and your wife. It's true, I have proof. A long pause. How long? I'm not sure. A few months, maybe longer. Where do you want to meet? We agreed on a coffee shop in Towson, neutral territory for both of us. Rachel Palmer turned out to be a small woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. She looked like someone who'd been carrying a heavy weight for a long time. I knew something was wrong, she said after I showed her the photos. He's been different, happier, working late more often. I'm sorry, I know this is hard. Are you going to divorce her? Yes. But first, I want her to understand what she's thrown away. Rachel studied the photos again. So, what did you have in mind? That afternoon, I put the next phase of my plan into motion. I called Palmer and Associates and asked to speak with Nina Chen, Elise's work rival. Nina was younger, hungrier, and had been trying to take over Elise's accounts for years. Nina? This is Tom Ritchie, Elise's husband. Oh, hi Tom. Is everything okay? I'm planning a surprise party for Elise's birthday next month, and I was hoping you could help me with something. Of course. I want to invite everyone from the office, but I'm not sure who she's closest to these days. She mentions working late with Matt Palmer a lot. Are they on a big project together? A pause. Matt Palmer? Tom, I don't think... Is there something I should know? Another pause, longer this time. Maybe we should talk in person. We met at a restaurant near Nina's apartment. She was nervous, constantly looking around like she was afraid someone would see us. I don't want to cause trouble, she said, but Elise and Matt, they've been spending a lot of time together, more than a normal boss-employee relationship would require. What kind of time? Long lunches, business trips that don't seem to have much business attached, Last week I saw them leaving together from the parking garage when they thought everyone had gone home. Has anyone else noticed? A few people. There's been talk. Perfect. Office gossip was like wildfire. Once it started, it was impossible to stop. Nina, I need a favor. There's a company event coming up, right? The Morrison account presentation? Next Friday. It's a big deal. Lots of clients, potential investors. I think Elise would want me there to support her. Could you make sure I get an invitation? Nina looked confused, but agreed. That evening, Elise came home excited about the Morrison presentation. She'd been working on it for months, and landing the account would mean a promotion and a significant raise. Pumper thinks we have a real shot, she said over dinner. This could change everything for me. That's great, honey. I'm proud of you. And I was, in a way. Elise was talented, ambitious, and good at her job. Under different circumstances, I would have been genuinely happy for her success. But these weren't different circumstances. Wednesday, Rachel Palmer called me. I confronted Matt last night, she said. He denied everything, of course. Said you were a jealous husband trying to cause trouble. What did you tell him? That I wanted to believe him, but I needed time to think. He's been extra attentive since then. Flowers, expensive dinners, the whole guilt routine. Good. Let him think he's convinced you. What happens next? Friday night, at the Morrison presentation. Can you be there? Matt asked me to come. Said it was important for me to support him. Perfect. Thursday evening, Elise tried on 3 different outfits before settling on a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. She looked beautiful, and for a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. The way her smile could light up a room, the confident way she carried herself, her effortless grace. It was hard to believe that person had betrayed me, but the memories lingered, no matter how much I wished they didn't. How do I look? She asked, spinning around in front of the bedroom mirror. Like $1 million. She kissed me on the cheek. Wish me luck? You don't need luck. You've got talent. After she left, I opened my laptop and made final preparations for the next day. I'd spent weeks planning this. Every detail mattered, and everything had to be perfect. The plan I'd carefully laid out had to work. There couldn't be any room for failure. Friday arrived gray and rainy, which seemed fitting. The sky reflected the heavy atmosphere of the situation. I put on my best suit, the one I'd worn to our wedding. It felt strange, as though it had been someone else's life. But tonight was about business, not sentiment, and I couldn't afford to get lost in the past. I drove downtown to the Palmer and Associates office building, the city's skyline cutting through the gray clouds like jagged teeth. The Morrison presentation was being held in the building's top-floor conference room, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. A breathtaking view, but tonight my focus was elsewhere. When I arrived, the room was already filling up, about 50 people, a mix of clients, employees, and a few local business leaders. Elise was in her element, working the room with the kind of confidence I hadn't seen in years. She was laughing, making small talk, her eyes sparkling with the kind of charisma that had always drawn people to her, and I hated it. Pumper was holding court near the bar, telling stories and laughing too loudly. He kept touching Elise's arm whenever he spoke to her, those little possessive gestures that made my jaw clench. Each touch felt like a small stab, a reminder of the betrayal, but I couldn't let it show. Not yet. I scanned the room for Rachel Palmer. She had been instrumental in the plan I'd set in motion, and I needed her by my side tonight. Rachel arrived at 7, looking elegant in a navy blue dress that fit her perfectly. She was poised, calm, everything I needed her to be. She found me near the windows, and I turned to face her as she approached. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, my voice steady but carrying the weight of everything that was about to happen. "I think so. What exactly are you planning?" Rachel replied, her eyes sharp with curiosity. I smiled. "You'll see soon enough." I turned my attention back to Elise. She was still laughing, still charming the room, oblivious to the storm I was about to unleash. It was a cruel kind of satisfaction that filled me. She'd had her chance to come clean, to make things right. But now it was too late. The truth was about to come crashing down on her, and she wouldn't be able to escape it. Not tonight. Rachel stepped closer, her presence a quiet anchor amid the tension building in the room. "Just make sure this works," she said, her voice low. "I don't want to see you fall into old patterns." I nodded, my mind locked in on the task ahead. "Don't worry, it will work. Tonight's about closure, about showing everyone who's been playing the game the right way. Just follow my lead." At 7:30, Pumper called for everyone's attention. He introduced the Morrison account team and began the presentation. Elise was scheduled to speak last, the big finale that would hopefully seal the deal. She was brilliant, professional, charming, completely in command of the room. For 20 minutes, she laid out a marketing strategy that was creative, comprehensive, and exactly what Morrison Industries needed. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Morrison's CEO stood up and shook her hand, smiling broadly. It was clear they were impressed. That's when I made my move. I walked to the front of the room and asked for the microphone. Pumper looked confused, but handed it over. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, "but I wanted to say something about my wife, Elise." Elise's face went white. She was staring at me like I'd lost my mind. "Elise and I have been married for 12 years, I continued, "and in all that time, I've never seen her more passionate about a project than this one. She's been working day and night, weekends, even giving up time with family to make sure everything was perfect." Murmurs of approval from the crowd. Elise was starting to relax, thinking I was just being supportive. In fact, she's been so dedicated that she's been staying late at the office several nights a week, working closely with Matt Palmer to make sure every detail was right. More nods from the audience. Pumper was smiling, probably thinking I was about to praise his leadership. Just last Friday, for instance, she told me she was working late with Matt. I drove by the office around 9 p.m. to bring her dinner, but the building was dark, so I called the office, thinking maybe they'd moved to a conference room I couldn't see from the street. The room was getting quieter. A few people were starting to look uncomfortable. But nobody answered, so I called Matt's cell phone, thinking maybe they'd gone to grab a bite to eat while they worked. Pumper's smile was fading. Matt answered on the first ring. He sounded breathless, like he'd been exercising. He said he was at home, alone, watching TV. Hadn't seen Elise all evening. The room was completely silent now. Elise looked like she was going to be sick. So I called my wife's cell phone. She answered from what sounded like a restaurant. Said she was having dinner with her friend Kara, working on wedding plans for Kara's upcoming marriage. I paused, looking around the room. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for the punchline. The funny thing is, Kara got married last month. Beautiful ceremony. Elise and I were both there. The silence stretched out for what felt like an hour. Then Rachel Palmer stood up. "Matt," she said in a voice that carried across the room, "is there something you'd like to tell me?" And that's when everything exploded. The Morrison presentation turned into the kind of disaster that people would talk about for years. Rachel Palmer's question hung in the air like smoke from a fire, and suddenly everyone in the room understood what was happening. Pumper tried to laugh it off. "Rachel, honey, this is obviously some kind of misunderstanding." "Is it?" Rachel's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "Because I've been getting some very interesting phone calls this week. People who've seen you and Elise together in places where business meetings don't usually happen." Elise finally found her voice. "This is insane. Tom, what are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth," I said calmly. "Something you might want to try sometime." Morrison's CEO was looking around the room like he'd accidentally walked into someone else's nightmare. Other clients were checking their phones, probably calling their drivers to come pick them up early. "Tom, we need to talk about this privately," Elise said, her voice tight with panic. "We've been talking privately for 12 years. I thought it was time to include some other people in the conversation." That's when Nina Chen stepped forward. I'd been hoping she would. "Actually," Nina said, addressing the room, "since we're all being honest here, maybe I should mention that the Morrison account presentation Elise just gave, about 60% of it was based on research and strategy work that I did last month." Elise spun around to face Nina. "That's not true." "I have the original files," Nina continued, "with timestamps. I can prove it." The room erupted into chaos. Morrison's people were heading for the exits. Pumper was trying to do damage control, but Rachel had cornered him near the bar and was speaking to him in a voice that could cut glass. I walked over to Elise, who was standing alone in the middle of the room like someone had just set off a bomb next to her. 12 years, I said quietly. 12 years of marriage. And you threw it away for him? Tom, please, we can fix this. No, we can't. You made sure of that. I never meant for it to happen. It just did. Nothing just happens, Elise. You made choices. Every late night, every lie, every time you came home and pretended to be my loving wife while you were planning your next meeting with him. Those were all choices. Tears were running down her face now, smearing her makeup. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what you've lost. I turned and walked toward the exit, but stopped when I reached Rachel Palmer. She was standing by herself now. Pumper had disappeared, probably to try to salvage what was left of his career. Are you okay? I asked. I will be. She looked at me with something that might have been respect. That was quite a performance. It wasn't a performance. It was just the truth. Sometimes that's the most powerful thing of all. I left the building and drove home through the rain. The house felt different now, not like a home anymore, just a building where I kept my stuff. I sat in the kitchen and waited. Elise came home an hour later. Her makeup was ruined, her hair was a mess, and she looked like someone who'd just watched her entire life collapse in the space of 30 minutes. "I'm fired," she said without preamble. "Morrison pulled the account. Pumper's been suspended pending an investigation. Nina's getting my promotion." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Are you really?" I thought about it. "Yeah, I am. I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry you made the choices that led us here, but I'm not sorry that the truth finally came out." She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "What happens now?" "Now you pack your things and find somewhere else to stay. I've already talked to a lawyer. The divorce papers will be ready next week." "Tom, please, can't we try to work this out? Go to counseling or something?" "Elise, you've been lying to me for months. You've been sleeping with your boss, stealing credit for other people's work, and living a completely separate life. What exactly would we work out?" "I made a mistake." "You made 100 mistakes. Every day for months you woke up and decided to keep lying to me. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." She was crying again, but I felt nothing. That surprised me. I'd expected to feel angry or hurt or vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. "Tom, please. I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of having me as a backup plan while you figured out whether Pumper was going to leave his wife for you, but you don't love me." She tried to argue, but we both knew I was right. I went upstairs to my office while she packed. I could hear her moving around the house, opening drawers and closets, occasionally crying or talking on the phone, probably calling Kara, looking for a place to stay. Around midnight, she knocked on my office door. "I'm leaving now," she said. "I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later." "Fine, call first." She stood in the doorway for a moment, like she was waiting for me to change my mind or beg her to stay. "Tom, I really am sorry." "I know you are. You're sorry you got caught." After she left, I sat in the quiet house and tried to figure out how I felt. 12 years of marriage, over in one evening. I should have been devastated, but mostly I just felt tired. My phone buzzed with a text message. From Drew. "Kelly heard about what happened at the presentation. Holy shit, man. Are you okay?" I typed back, "I'm fine. It's over. Want some company? Not tonight. But thanks." I turned off the lights and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up wondering where my wife really was. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in Francine's law office, signing the final divorce papers. Elise had tried to contest the settlement, claiming she deserved half of everything because she'd contributed to the marriage. Francine had quickly disabused her of that notion. "She's getting her car, her personal belongings, and whatever was in her individual checking account," Francine explained. "The house, the joint savings, your retirement accounts, all yours. Maryland is a no-fault state, but adultery still matters when it comes to asset division." "What about her lawyer?" "She fired him last week. Apparently she can't afford his fees anymore." I wasn't surprised. Word had gotten around Baltimore's business community about what happened at the Morrison presentation. Elise's reputation was ruined, and in a city like Baltimore, reputation was everything. "Has she found work?" "I heard she's working at a call center in Glen Burnie. Temporary work, minimum wage." I should have felt satisfied, but mostly I just felt sad. Not for Elise. She'd made her choices, but for the waste of it all. She'd been talented, successful, respected. She'd thrown it all away for a man who'd dropped her the moment their affair became public knowledge. Pumper, meanwhile, had managed to keep his job, though he'd been demoted, and his wife had filed for divorce. He was living in a studio apartment in Dundalk and driving a 10-year-old Honda instead of his BMW. Rachel Palmer had taken him for everything she could get. I was putting the signed papers into my briefcase when Francine's secretary knocked on the door. "Tom, there's someone here to see you. Says it's important." It was Kara, Elise's former best friend. She looked nervous, constantly glancing around like she expected someone to jump out at her. "Tom, I need to talk to you." "About what?" "About Elise. About what really happened." We went to a coffee shop across from Francine's office. Kara ordered a latte with extra foam and spent 5 minutes stirring it before she started talking. "I feel terrible about what happened," she said. "I should have told you sooner." "Told me what?" "About the affair. I knew about it from the beginning." "How long was the beginning?" 8 months ago, maybe longer." 8 months. I'd suspected it was longer than I'd known, but hearing it confirmed still hit like a punch to the stomach. "She told me she was going to leave you," Kara continued. "Said she was just waiting for the right time." "Why didn't you tell me?" Because, she paused, looking uncomfortable. Because I was hoping she'd come to her senses. And because she's my friend. Was my friend. What changed? What you did at the presentation? The way you handled it? You didn't scream or make threats or try to hurt anyone. You just told the truth and let everyone draw their own conclusions. And I realized that Elise didn't deserve you. She never did. Kara reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. These are copies of text messages between Elise and Matt. She asked me to keep them on my phone in case something happened to hers. Insurance, she called it. I opened the envelope and immediately wished I hadn't. The messages were explicit, detailed, and went back almost a year. They talked about places they'd been together, things they'd done, plans they'd made for a future that didn't include me. In one message, Elise had written, "Tom's so clueless. I could probably bring you home for dinner and he wouldn't figure it out." In another, "Can't wait until I don't have to pretend anymore. This house feels like a prison. Why are you showing me these? Because you deserve to know the truth. The whole truth." I closed the envelope and handed it back to her. "Keep them. I don't need to see any more." "Tom, I'm sorry. You should have been honest from the beginning, but that seems to be a rare quality these days." I left Kara sitting in the coffee shop and drove home. The house felt bigger now that Elise's things were gone, but also more peaceful. I'd started redecorating, replacing the furniture and artwork she'd chosen with things I actually liked. That evening, Drew came over with pizza and beer. We sat on the couch watching the Orioles game and not talking about anything important. "You seem better," he said during the 7th inning. "I am better." "Any regrets?" I thought about it. About the marriage ending? No. About the way it ended? Sometimes. What would you have done differently? I would have confronted her privately first, given her a chance to end it with some dignity. She didn't give you the same consideration. I know, but I'm not her. Drew nodded and grabbed another beer. "So what's next?" "I don't know. Work. Maybe travel. I haven't thought beyond getting through the divorce." "You should start dating again. Eventually. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because I need to figure out how I missed the signs for so long. I don't want to make the same mistakes again." The game went into extra innings, and we stayed up until midnight watching the Orioles lose in the 13th. After Drew left, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and thought about the future. For the first time in months, it looked bright. 6 months later, I ran into Elise at the grocery store in Towson. She looked older, tired, like someone who'd been carrying a heavy weight for a long time. I barely recognized her. She was working as a cashier at a discount store, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Essex. The woman I once knew, the one I had shared my life with, seemed like a distant memory now. "Tom?" she said, her voice a little surprised. "How are you?" "Good. You?" "Getting by." She paused, her hands nervously smoothing out her apron. "I heard you got promoted." "Senior partner. It's been a good year." "I'm glad. You deserve it." We stood there for a moment, neither of us sure what to say next. It was an odd feeling, seeing her again. We used to be everything to each other, two people who promised to love each other forever. Now here we were, strangers in a grocery store aisle. "Tom, I want you to know—" "You don't need to say anything, Elise." "Yes, I do. I was wrong. About everything. I threw away the best thing in my life for something that was never real." "I know." She seemed to want to say more, but the words weren't coming easily. The silence between us felt heavy, like a wall that had been built between us over the years, brick by painful brick. Do you think we could ever be friends again?" Her voice trembled slightly, the vulnerability in her eyes impossible to ignore. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find some trace of the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. She was still there, somewhere beneath the tiredness and regret. But she was a stranger now. "I don't think so," I said gently. "Too much has happened." She nodded slowly, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I understand. I hope things work out for you, Elise. I really do." "Thank you. That means more than you know." I turned and walked away without looking back. I could feel her watching me, but I didn't give in to the temptation to turn around. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a few minutes, staring out the windshield. I waited to feel something, sadness, anger, regret, but all I felt was closure. I didn't know how to explain it, but it was like a door had finally closed, and the weight that had been on my shoulders for so long had lifted. There was nothing left to carry. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Drew. "Still on for dinner tonight?" I typed back quickly. "Absolutely. See you at 7. Then I drove home to my peaceful house. The house where no one was lying to me, no one was pretending to be someone they weren't. It wasn't the life I'd originally planned, but it was honest. And after everything that had happened, after all the chaos, lies, and broken promises, honesty felt like the most valuable thing in the world. The last move in any game is often the most important one. It determines whether you win or lose, whether you walk away with dignity or crawl away in defeat. I'd made my last move, and I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed Elise's life. That had never been the goal. I'd won because I had refused to let her lies define me. I'd chosen truth over comfortable deception, dignity over desperate attempts to save a marriage that had been beyond saving. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, and that's exactly what I intended to do.